line is what can you do as a supply chain manager? Well, it really depends on what your situation is. Now, if you're a private fleet, or you have a private fleet, or you have fleet operations, this is where some risk mitigation can come into play, as you need to understand your suppliers, where they get the fuel they put in your trucks for you to operate. And by gaining a better understanding of the supply network that supplies your operation, then you can start to look at it and find the single points of failure. Identify them. Go, well, what happens if the pipeline stops pumping? What do we do? What if there's some sort of storm? What do we do? You look at the different things that could create a problem, and then you ask two questions. The first question ends up being, how will this screw us? How will this mess up our operation? And then when you define how it messes up your operation, the second question is not, how do I prevent it from happening, but what do I do to minimize the length of the screw? How long do I have to put up with it? And what alternatives do I have that once there's a failure, how can I shorten the amount of time that I have to deal with that screwing that I'm getting out of the infrastructure? Those two questions guide the research that you need to do. Those two questions guide the actions that you need to take to fortify your supply chain. And we're talking about the supply of what you need as material, fuel, into supporting your fleet. The tank farms, the terminals, are an integral part of the infrastructure of the pipelines. The pipeline companies need these terminals to be able to distribute the fuel to trucks and other delivery vehicles within the local markets that are along the path of the pipeline. There's three things that happen when there is a hiccup in that finished goods or that refined petroleum infrastructure. The first is that there is a fairly rapid increase in prices. Any change in the performance of the network changes the supply, and that will have pricing impacts. The second thing that happens is pollution. And the third thing that happens is cost increases and how costs get passed along to the consumer. So remember, there's two questions you want to ask. How will this screw up our operation? And then how do we shorten the length of time that we're screwed? Those two questions guide your research.